and we have to spend so much time working within boundaries, that there's some sort of freedom and release that comes with working with puppetry, which is fascinating because the puppet is such a frame. It's such a limit. It just kind of breaks the rules and breaks those boundaries.
Welcome back to Puppeteers. We're your hosts, Adam Kreutinger
and Cameron Garrity.
And today we have Sarah Nolen on the show. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all. I'm very happy to be here. I'm a big fan of the show.
We're so happy to have you here. And for those who don't know, Sarah Nolen is a graduate of both the University of Connecticut and the University of Texas. She is a
Southern Methodist University in Dallas.
There it is. Sorry about that. And but is an expert in the field of puppetry and of filmmaking, and she is she is an artist in residence at the Puppet Showplace Theater in Brookline, Massachusetts, and we are so glad to have her on Puppeteer. Sarah Nolen, welcome to the show.
Oh, shucks. Thanks, guys. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, so good to finally have you here, and it's great to see a little peek into your home studio.
Yeah.
Yes, welcome to my live and workspace. This is where the magic happens, so they say. And I've got my storage happening back there. So it's not like a giant, I don't live in a giant storage unit. But yeah, I actually, it's a beautiful, this used to be an old textile mill.
Oh,
so
cool.
Ceilings are huge, which is great. And then I have my own kitchen, but we all share a bathroom on this floor and everything. So
Okay,
it's
so
all
sorry,
artists.
So this is in your home, or it's not in your home? This is a separate studio?
This is my home. So I actually
yeah.
I work down here, and then if I tilt my camera up a little, there's my home.
Oh,
okay.
Nice.
Which is the loft up there, and then I am down here.
I'll tell you.
So I try to keep them separate.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that have studios that are like in other places, which is great. And sometimes there's so much more you can do with that. But I'll tell you, for my working style, I want to get up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I have an idea, I want to get started, or I want to work until I'm dead tired and then be able to flop into my bed. There's nothing like having your work studio at home.
Yeah, and I agree that sometimes it's like, oh, well, people say if you work at home, then won't you just like rest all the time? And it's like, no, you'll work all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
which is great. And I agree with you, Adam, that sometimes the best working hours are 8 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Yeah. You know, it's so funny.
Especially in the summer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. It's so funny. I've always wondered that. I have noticed that over my time of being a person who makes anything, that I found like between like 1 o'clock and 4 a.m. is where I do my best work.
Yes.
And I think about it. I feel like it's because you're so tired that you don't second guess yourself. You just do. There's no filter anymore, and then nothing's stopping you.
That and nobody's watching.
Yeah.
Like nobody's going to email you.
Anyway.
Nobody is going to text you. If there's no distractions, and that's my favorite part of it.
Yeah.
It's like I'm getting away with it.
Yeah, it's like you're on vacation, but working.
Yeah.
Cool. So what are you up to now? Do you have any projects on your table?
Oh yeah, we're a bit busy. We, as in me and the projects and the puppets. I'm working on a commission right now, a big build commission, and that's going to be due coming up this fall. And then I'm also working on a show at Puppet Showplace Theater. It's a collaboration or co-production between Puppet Showplace Theater and We the People, WEE. They're a nonprofit in Boston, and we're working on a show called My Night in the Planetarium, and I'm building a big pop-up book. So I'm the designer and builder for that show. And it's going to be performed by Tanya, who is part of We the People. And it's all about social justice and teaching kids kind of activism through art at a young age. And that's really, really great. And then I'm also touring. So I just wrapped up my first solo summer multi-state tour with my show, The Fairy Tailor. I went all the way down to Georgia, and that was really fun. And then I'm also working on Customs, which is the Unima project, and that's coming around again. And yeah, just very busy. It's been busy. Yeah. It's good. It's a good busy.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, and for as long as I've known you, you've always kind of seemingly had all these balls in the air, which is fantastic. I mean, to see not only how much you're working, but also the quality of the work has always been so impressive to me.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk because we had when we had Pam Arciero on the show back in February, she was describing that you were going to be an artist in residence at the O'Neill, working on the customs project. But we'd love to have you describe it a bit in your own words, and it's certainly come a long way since February. But we'd love to hear your perspective as director.
Oh yeah, Customs is a project that is spearheaded by the UNIMA, which is Union International de la Marionette, and that is, if anybody is not a member, I say go for it, because they have lots of scholarships and membership benefits, like, you know, the Puppetry International is through them, I believe. But they're spearheading this project called the Four Creations, Four Continents project. And basically at the next UNIMA Congress, which is going to happen in Bali in 2020, it's going to be 4 companies from all over the world that are performing the same show 4 different ways. And the way they've kind of found the companies is by dividing up the world into continents, 4 continents. And it's the 3 Americas, Europe, Asia, and Africa. So each of these continents has to basically reach out to puppeteers, younger puppeteers in those areas, and bring together a company. So the 3 Americas company is puppeteers from North America, US, and South America, and Latin America. And so as director, I basically reached out to UNIMA members and board members in the different countries, and found we have a puppeteer from Chile, from Canada, and from the US, and then I'm director. And we've also have one from Mexico. So we have the 4 puppeteers and me, and then we put this show together. It's actually the show is an object puppetry show written by Marcos Nikolewski from Brazil. And that was, I think, a juried selection. And so we got the script, and I think the biggest hurdle was getting everyone, and then getting everyone to get to the O'Neill. When we had that invitation from Pam, it was like, yes, we have a goal, let's get there. And so there was a lot of visa letter writing and reaching out to different puppeteers and seeing who would be available, and who could actually travel to the US. And it was, it came together really, really well. I'm really happy with the work we did at that first workshop. We got through the whole piece. And now we're going to have a second workshop in January in Canada, in Montreal. And then the final presentation will be in April 2020. So here we go.
That's great.
But the piece itself, sorry, that's all of the it's all of the like production side, but the piece itself is really beautiful. It's called Customs, and it basically follows the gatekeeper, the border agent at an airport, who is looking through people's luggage at customs. And once he opens a suitcase, the contents inside come to life and tell a story, either about connection, or strangers becoming neighbors, or refugee journeys. It's really, it's very powerful. And at the end, the last suitcase is the suitcase of a refugee. And I think it's all about this border agent. We see him bookended by each suitcase, and what he is feeling about, the judgment that you pass on someone if you rummage through their stuff, right? And the things we carry, what stories they tell, and that's all really lovely. Ta-da! I did it.
It's beautiful. It's awesome.
It's really great. And I got a chance to see it in its at the O'Neill when you guys presented it, and it was certainly very evocative and just a really beautiful piece. What kind of, because it's a script, obviously, as you said, that other people are working on, what kind of steps did you take to make sure that it was, or it will be, different from the other people who are directing that show, that same text?
I have no idea what they are doing. And so I don't know if it will be different. I'm sure it will be, because the combination of all of us working together in a room is a different chemistry than any other production is going to have. And they're going to have a different chemistry with each other. And so when we were working together, I think one of the things that my goal was with the first workshop was, especially with object puppetry, is making each moment make sense, right? Like, you never want to get lost, especially with puppets without faces and without gazes and all this stuff. You just need to make it very clear who's moving, not too many people moving at the same time. And I think also we really expanded the last suitcase. I think in the script, it actually, we did some creative departures from the script, and the last sequence, or the last suitcase, I think the description of that in the script is just sandals walking on a map, and that's it. And then it comes back. But I think we kind of found that to be the climax of the whole play, and that needs to, this moment of the customs agent watching and seeing the journey that this person took, and having a new compassion at the end of the show. I think that was our goal. And I didn't think sandals walking across would be enough. And so we really expanded it. We have the ship, we have running through night, we have a tank, we have, we just found all these different things. And that was like a combination of us really devising and working together as a group. So that was the goal. And that was the most work. I think that suitcase was the most work. Everything else was pretty, it was very well written.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like that the writer left it just very simply at the end, and I felt that gave us permission to kind of expand on that last journey. So
it'd be so cool to see. I think I was saying that when we were talking to Pam, how cool it would be to be able to see all of them, even if they were all at one conference or something, or all at one festival, to be able to compare them. Like how cool would that be, because the way people interpret things because of their life experiences, again, if the direction says this character wears a hat, you're going to interpret that different if you're in New York City versus if you're in Texas versus especially if you're in a different country or something. Like, it means something kind of different. Even little things like that to everybody.
Yeah,
totally.
And the puppetry traditions, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Oh, of course.
I've spent a lot of time watching, especially in the past few years, watching hand puppetry, and a lot of that comes from Paul Vincent Davis and Carol Fijan, and that, and the sand glass training. And I think that all came into play. So I'm really curious how, things, probably in Europe, more commedia or mass performance might come into play. I'm fascinated about the comedy too, and the comic timing, like
Right.
what different companies will find funny, or where will they find the humor? Cause it's going to be all over the place.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Because even thinking about is one thing I learned about with books and translating books. Like, a lot of books that are popular in America that rhyme, translate into other languages, like, they don't rhyme when it's translated. So, like, in a way, it's like, depending on the book and the context, like, it might not even make that much sense as to why this is even a story. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Well, and it's also very interesting about, especially right now with the closing of borders and the stricter border regulations going on, it's very potent in the play. And so I think that's going to be an interesting take, is, what we really talked about, well, where we didn't really define where folks are flying into, what is the airport that people are reaching into, but it was more of a, Canada or US place. And
Right.
so it's really interesting because Abigail couldn't get there. She's from Mexico. She couldn't get her visa in time because she needed to have applied at least, I think it was like a month or two in advance. And, I hadn't been able to cast her until. So now she will be joining us for Montreal, but that's going to be us working her into Mark's parts. And Mark was the customs agent. So, yeah, that was also very frustrating. And there's like this meta poetry to it because it's like, oh, we actually will be checking this luggage that is going to come to life for a show, but it will actually pass through an airport when we go to Bali, and like we are all going to be traveling together over there. And so there's some nice harmony in there with the show and the making of. So,
well, would love to kind of go back a little bit and go back to your early creative roots. What kind of kid were you growing up? What were some early artistic influences for you?
I grew up in Austin, Texas, and which was a great time to be a kid in the 90s. It was a great time, and especially in Austin, because Austin's a very creative city. There was always a ton of music going on, South by Southwest and film, and University of Texas was around. So there was always a lot happening in Austin, which was great. And both of my folks, I think had a huge influence on me. My dad was a graphic designer, and my mom taught PPCD or preschool for children with disabilities. That's in what they call it in Texas. And so she always had lots of toys around, and as an educator for children with disabilities, needed to explain things in many, many ways. And so she always had visual aids and thought visually. And my dad, as a graphic designer, was an artist, went to UT, and so I think he exposed me to a lot of film. Like that was my influence from him, was watching a lot of old noir and Marx Brothers and Bill Plimpton cartoons, and introducing me to Jan Svankmajer at a young age, just very interesting film, and just gave me an appreciation for just see everything there is to see, just watch it, because you never know where the inspiration is going to come from. So as a kid, I was always, I loved telling stories, but with props. And I loved, if I gave a presentation for school, I would somehow figure out how to either put a puppet in it or use a prop or some sort of like special effect for the presentation, even though it wasn't called upon at all. I one of my first shows was a living room show I did for my folks when I was maybe in, I don't know, first or second grade, and it was Rapunzel told with toilet paper rolls, and like Rapunzel's hair was the toilet paper, and it came down, and just stuff like that. But I do remember my very first puppet was a Nancy Drew puppet that I made for a book report. So I didn't have to give the book report. Nancy Drew gave the book report. And I had a show called The Sock Sisters. That was a hit at the old family reunion. And I also loved, I guess influence-wise, we didn't have cable, so I didn't get to watch Fraggle Rock, and I think the Muppet Show wasn't airing anymore, but I did, get to rent. We went to video stores all the time, and so I rented a lot of things. But this one tape we had the tape of the Muppet Weird Stuff. I don't know if y'all know this tape, but it
might have. I'm not sure. Go ahead and describe it.
It's weird. It's just like all of the really crazy Muppet skits as hosted by Gonzo, and it was just like all the Uzbekistan bits and the, I think Gonzo wrestles a brick. and stuff like that.
Was
so
that
that
the
was
one with
great.
Lime and the Coconut? Or was that maybe a different one?
That was a different. We definitely
Okay.
had the bird one where all the birds come like chirping in.
Oh,
but
yeah.
there was that, and so. But Muppets Tonight was big. I do remember loving and watching Muppets Tonight with my folks, just always making things. I was making puppets at a young age and performing shows at school, just for fun. Anytime there was a talent show. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I also, I took piano lessons and did sports, and I just had a very full childhood. Oh, and there was this one video. Have y'all ever seen Hug a Bunch?
Never heard of it.
Oh man,
not by name at least. I may have seen it, but
that was probably a pretty big influence. Was Hug a Bunch, which was this really strange movie from the 80s about this land that this girl like goes through a mirror into Hug-a-Land, and it's all these little like Cupid baby dolls that like want to hug. It's very odd, but I loved it as a kid. But yeah, so that was kind of like my childhood, and then I think around 7th grade, I discovered iMovie on our computer, and that's when I started getting into film. That's when I really started. We didn't have a camera, so I just started editing. I literally was editing movies with photos that I scanned in. So I was making these weird movies with just like audio and photos, and then editing them. And then I think. I saved up enough money to get a video camera the next year, and that's when I started making movies. And I was so nervous. I was too nervous to perform puppetry live, so I started just making puppet films all through high school. So I either had a camera in my hands all the time. I would go around and film bands at our high school, and edit videos. I did a lot of mini documentaries on like the dance program that we had, or I was making like these secret puppet movies that I didn't really want to show anybody. But yeah, that's what I was doing at a young age, and I really loved it. Yeah,
that's awesome. So then, when you ended up going to college to study film, it was always kind of puppetry went hand in hand with that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think I was actually, I really loved making puppet films, but I also loved just being behind the camera, because it was, I was getting to watch, to view everything through a lens. There was something that I was focused on, and my gaze was through the camera, and that's how I was able to see everything and kind of get into these really interesting social dynamic. I just was able to do these weird documentaries around Austin as a teenager on just music stuff. Or we had this program, Hi-Fi High School, where we were making little videos for a daily TV show when I was a senior. But then I was like, when I went to, I knew I wanted to go to film school, but I was like, but am I
assume that maybe you didn't know that there was puppetry for college at the time too?
Yeah.
I
was
like,
like,
probably seemed like an option. It probably didn't seem like an option to go to school for puppetry.
Right.
No. I was like, there's no way I can do puppetry. So I should, because I've been making all of these puppets, maybe I should just learn how to film my puppets better. Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my idea at first, but then I was also really into documentary, and I was like, well, what do I do? But I think the clincher was my mom would take my videos into her students, and show her students my puppet videos. And she said she came home one time, and there was this one kid that watched a video of mine called Soap Opera, and it was literally like soap boxes lip syncing to an opera from Mozart, the Papageno song. And he was I think he was not pre-verbal, but he just had speech impediments. And he went home and his mom called and was like, why is he saying Papageno? Like, what is Papageno? And had no idea, because he just kept saying it and saying it and saying it. And I think my mom told me that. I thought it was so funny that this kid who didn't say anything went home and was running around saying Papageno, Papageno, which is like so silly. And that's when I was like, oh, making puppet films can be beneficial and helpful. Making puppet films can be educational. Oh, right. It was just this, like, what I did as a fun side project actually could go somewhere and be, because watching what my mom does as a teacher was incredible growing up. But I wanted to do something like that, but to help people, but in a more creative, entertaining type of way. So going to film school was amazing, because I basically, within the first semester, I was the puppet woman, right?
Yeah.
I was the one that made puppet films and put, I just like made these wacky, like hot glue puppets for all of my puppet filmmaking. And that was kind of like, that's when I was like, okay, I want to do children's educational media. Like, that is the goal.
Right.
And so I started putting puppets in all of my films, and I actually, I really wanted to take education courses, because I knew education courses would really help. And so I made a secondary interdisciplinary degree in children's educational media, where I took developmental psych classes and children's literature classes and everything, just so I could really hone it all. And that culminated kind of in a senior project, which was a TV pilot I made called ABC Detectives. It was so sweet. But yeah, that was it was about a girl, Kay, and her dog Flight, and they ran around town. It was very noir, because I had watched a lot of like noir films when I was a kid and really loved that style. And she would investigate missing letters, like letters had gone missing, very important letters for like public signs and stuff. And she would go and investigate and find where they're hiding out. But yeah, it was really fun. It was also like, I was also searching for puppet instruction. Mm-hmm. And I just, in Texas, I was having a really hard time finding it. Right. Yeah. But yeah, college was great. I think it was also like a culture shock going from Austin to Dallas, because Austin was very, underground. There were a lot of like women wearing flannel.
It's like Portland for the South, basically.
Yeah,
well, and then described to me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
There's this big fight, like who started Keep Austin Weird or Keep Portland Weird? Like who started that under Austin? But yeah, a lot of that, and then I went to Dallas, and it was like, whoa. Everybody it was, especially like SMU, Southern Methodist University. I didn't realize, I went there because they had a really great film program. Film program saved me. It was amazing. All the professors were really, really great, and there were small classes. So I'm just going to like dive into work here and working on films, and that will be my social life. And it was like being on film sets and helping people out, and I ended up becoming the station manager of the radio station, and I ran the radio station for 2 years and worked in that was my first exposure to theater, really, was working in the prop shop, because I had been working in the media library, and I saw a sign for the prop shop, and it said something about make masks and puppets, and I was like, puppets, give me that. Yeah, I did. My first 16 millimeter was the first time that I did puppets with humans. Mm. And so I actually cast like a I think she was 8 or 7 at the time, a girl. And it was called this film called Unkempt Room. And it was basically like this girl has this messy room, and it's a metaphor for her just like cleaning it up. But the whole journey of her cleaning her room is this really giant adventure, which is kind of, a way to turn work into play, which I think is a really great theme in what I do. But yeah, then I also, in college, I was just like, how do I study puppetry? And I started really looking into this. A professor of mine got an email from Michael Earl, and he forwarded it to me. And so I wrote a grant basically. And Michael Earl, I emailed him and I was like, look, is there any way that he said he was about to do, some workshops in the UK. And I emailed him asking, is there any way you would ever come to Texas, or do you do things in the States? And he was like, oh yeah, I do my weekly workshop starting this date, in California. And I was like, okay. And I was like, this is the first opportunity I've heard of for like television puppetry. And so I wrote a grant so I could get a plane ticket to go and just work with him in this like workshop he held pretty much in his living room, just on like a random Monday. But that was so helpful. That was before I did ABC Detectives, and that was the first time I was exposed to a monitor that you can see while you're filming and puppeteering. And I was like, oh, and the first time that you like walk in and turn to the camera and say, hello, my name is Sarah, and then leave, right? And it was just like, holy crap. It just like blew my mind, this very simple thing. And I hadn't come across it before. I hadn't seen any pictures, or I hadn't seen any instructional videos. So that was the first time that I was like, oh, this is how I can film my pilot. Right.
Yeah. Well, and the director in you must have loved that, because it is such a directorial eye that you get to have as a puppeteer watching your monitor as you perform.
Exactly. And I think that's why I love being behind the camera so much. Being behind the puppet is like two very, very similar places. They're just, they're very interconnected. Like film and puppetry, in my mind, they share so much visually and story-wise than I think that you would normally think. But I wanted to do kids media so bad that I did an internship in LA with a company one summer. And that was just like me racking up $500 worth of parking tickets. And just like in LA, like every day I would pass Henson, be like, oh, bye Henson. Like drive, it was on Sunset La Brea, and it was a production house that would do things for Disney Channel. So I was like doing all these runs to Disney Channel every day. This was like before internships in the entertainment industry were paid, right? Mm. This was the era of I'll do whatever you need to do. And
getting experience.
Yes, exactly. It was like I will PA for 3 days for no pay, sure. And so it was actually very helpful, because that I saw how they would cast kids. And I saw how they put treatments together for show pitches, and I saw it, right? And so I saw a lot of things that I wouldn't have if I had stayed in Dallas for that summer. So that was really, really great. Then I came back, and was the summer before my senior year. That's when I did Sandglass. I think it was my junior year that I was like, I need some puppet instruction. I need some sort of training. And I think I just went online and typed in like puppet workshops in the US, and Sandglass Theater Institute popped up. And there was this puppet. I think it was from their earlier shows, one of the dream shows that they did. But it was like a puppet on a unicycle that had wings. And I was like, what is that? Right? And it's just like, I need to go learn from that. I don't know what that is, but I got to go. And so I saved up money, and I just like I remember I flew out to Connecticut because they were having the workshop at the University of Connecticut. I had never heard of the University of Connecticut, and I had no idea how to puppet program either. But that summer was where Sandglass actually held their 3-week workshop, was at UConn, which was really crazy because that was in 2008. And during that week, we worked in the shop. Dave Regan was helping with work, and that workshop blew my mind. That workshop opened up my brain so much to the world of puppetry, because I was thinking it was all television style. It was all a lot of Muppet stuff, and then there was stop motion that had all the darker, like, creepy stuff. And then I started realizing that in live puppetry, there's this whole other world that I wasn't even considering. And that was really eye-opening. And I think that just made such a huge impression on me as an artist. And also the technical discipline that you get out of Sandglass, with Eric and Inez Zeller-Bass. Their training was so great. It was basically puppet boot camp. I don't know if y'all have heard of it or gone.
I have. I've not been to it, and I know a lot of people. I knew you attended there. I knew Madison J. Cripps.
I think he did it the year before or after me. But yeah, it's if anyone wants to learn just the technical skill and beginning the movement and just have a basis, a really strong foundation for puppet performance and construction. They did construction and puppet, and we would do a whole hour a day of just like puppet concepting the worlds. Like Eric is very big on like why puppets, and I think honestly that's the hardest part of puppetry is deciding the story.
Definitely,
because if you're taking a story and then forcing a puppet world onto it and that it doesn't call for it, then you're wasting your time, man.
Totally.
But yeah, it's fascinating. I loved that workshop. That really opened my eyes. And then I remember coming back and just being like, how do I get back there? Get back to that place of like those people and that kind of work, right? Because film was very different. Or how can I bring that into the film work and all this? I had all these questions about that.
Especially with the Muppet sort of style, not just of the puppets, but of the way that they're performed in the worlds that they're performed in. A lot of times puppet for film end up having to exist within the reality of the regular world. It doesn't have its own aesthetic. Like, it has to be very much real in the human world. And I think that's what's so great about puppetry and theater. And I'm sure what you experienced at Sandglass, of it could have its completely own aesthetic and work by its own rules and its own gravity and all those sorts of things. So I think that's what's been great in the last 10, 15 years about puppetry, especially with things like what Heather Henson is doing and Alex Griffin, of bringing that theatrical puppetry into the film medium. And you're certainly someone who's done that.
Right. And it's that bringing a sense of play without boundaries. Because even, and I'll talk about improv later, but even with improv, it's like you are bound by your body. And so, yeah, I think we have to spend so much time in a rule-driven world, and we have to spend so much time working within boundaries, that there's some sort of freedom and release that comes with working with puppetry, which is fascinating because the puppet is such a frame. It's such a limit, right? But there's something very, it just kind of breaks the rules and breaks those boundaries for even a bit.
Well, and I think of even, sorry to interrupt you again, but I think of the Bugsley Berkeley film that you did, and you just had that
Busby Berkeley, yeah.
Yes, thank you. And you had that beautiful tassel from like a graduation cap, and you were just holding it with a white glove, and all of a sudden it goes from being a tassel and a glove to an elegant woman at a night party, and that was just so great. And playing with the rules of what the definition is, and like you said with the borders piece, that all of a sudden you're making sure that an audience sees that object as something else completely, and you rewrite those rules and you rewrite what you're seeing.
But also the magic of seeing the object first as just an object. Like, it's almost like a magic trick. I have a show called The Fairy Tailer where I tell the story of Little Red Riding Hoodie, with all coats. So like Little Red is a hoodie, Grandma's a nightgown, the wolf is a fur coat. But it's almost like a magic trick where, I bring up the hoodie and I'm just showing the audience, I'm like, look at this ordinary hoodie. Like, oh, she's got a story to tell or something. And then, you layer down and the hood kind of pops over and the hood becomes the head. I actually have like a mouth plate in there, and then she pops back up and she's like springing to life, and the whole audience just is like, whoa. And it is kind of a magic trick in that way, which is really fun. But I think you have to see it as a thing first. At some point we want to see the material just as material.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And I think that's why a lot of that's why puppet shows are so good for death scenes.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of my early tabletop stuff, it was just like puppets dying.
Yeah.
But it was in this like kind of I shouldn't say this, but it was in this kind of enjoyable way that was like kind of satisfying. So yeah, I don't know. There's that curiosity to like get the audience invested in this piece of cloth, and then when it dies, it does actually die because it can't breathe anymore because you're not lending it any breath. Right. But yeah, so I was just I think in college and film school, I was very much like, how can I apply puppetry to my film? And then how can I get more instruction on this form? I remember looking up the Lone Star Puppet Guild, and I joined them. I met Pig Smith, and that was really great. But then I remember after I did ABC Detectives, I think my last semester, I was just like, I got to get out of Dallas. I think I walked away from SMU with like 4 really great friends. And so I was like, I have my friends, I'm good. I'm going to go to Copenhagen. So my last semester, I traveled abroad to Copenhagen. And the only reason I chose Denmark over, I think it was Egypt, was another option. I just looked up Denmark puppets, and there was a puppet festival happening the same semester as when I would go. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to Copenhagen. I'm going to volunteer for this puppet festival. And that's what I did. And it was really amazing. I went to Denmark for my last semester of college and volunteered for the Copenhagen Puppet Festival. And that's the first time I saw Blind Summit. They were performing. I saw these like a French company, and I remember seeing a guy from Hungary. And yeah, it was great. It was really amazing. So yeah, then it was like after film school, I had my ABC pilot, and just coming home and like being like, I'm gonna find out more about puppetry. And I remember I back ordered over 40 issues of Puppetry International just so I could read about it. And that was kind of the beginnings of my studies, was just spending a lot of money on back orders of a magazine, which was great. It was really great. It was amazing.
To get the current events, especially at that, because there's still isn't really a great, one-stop shop to be able to catch up on all that kind of stuff. So to be able to have that is huge.
Yeah, and there's so many great articles just about really specific parts of puppet plays or styles. Like, let's explore all the scripts of Punch and Judy and stuff like that. But then I got a call, and I was like in Austin, and I told myself, I'm never going back to Dallas. And then I got a call. And then I got a call from a friend who was like, I'm working for this production company that I interned for. My friend Juan called me, and he was like, they need someone this Thursday. And it was like Tuesday. And I was like, okay. So I literally like threw everything in my car. I drove back up to Dallas. My friends were like renting a house and they had just had someone move out. So I moved right in. I had an interview on Thursday morning and then got the job. And so then I was working in reality TV as a production assistant for a television show called Gator 911.
So no puppets in that, I'm guessing.
There's actually a lot of puppetry in reality television. Learned a lot from that because I also worked at the company after our first season. We would go and shoot these sizzle reels, and we would do show pitches, and I would put together and do like graphic designing stuff for treatments and one pages and all this stuff. And then we actually ended up getting another show. So I worked 2 seasons on Donna Decorates Dallas, which is a home and garden television show. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, no. But it is a woman who basically went into homes and very big homes and redid a room or redesigned something and leopard print was a neutral.
Oh no.
Neutral.
I don't know. It's just a fascinating world. And being the coordinator, you're working with homeowners and you're working with the crew and you're staffing and, it was just like a big calendar puzzle. Mm-hmm. And, I was also, what was great is with my film degree is I was coordinating, but every now and then I would do camera or I would drive the van every day. I would load the gear sometimes, offload media, stuff like that. So that was all. It was a lot. It was very like. It was a nutty time because I was doing that by day, but then I was moonlighting as an improviser. So I was very interested in puppetry, but I was terrified of performing live. So I thought, well, what's the best way to do this? And I thought, well, I'll do improv comedy classes. And so I did a year. I was working 3 years doing reality television, but then at night I was doing a year-long training program in improv comedy. So like long form stuff. And that was really fun.
Was that with like a local group?
Yeah, that was with the Dallas Comedy House, which was really great. It's run by this woman, Amanda Austin. They actually just opened the new venue that they have. It's like they've moved a bunch, and this is hopefully their forever home. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was great. It was such great training, and I had never had any. I had done some plays in high school, but I had never had any performance training really, other than sandglass. What it was like to be on stage, and that was just like literally. I think my first scene ever was my professor just like pushed me out on stage because I would stand there and I would just watch everyone, right?
Yeah.
And then he pushed me out and I was like, ah. So that was really fun. It was a great community there. And I actually started doing, they had this thing called Block Party, and that's when I started performing tabletop shows, was at the Comedy House. Like that, they would do this thing once a month called Block Party, and that was the first time I did this show called Chestnuts, which was kind of like a Christmas show about a woman who is trying to make a pie, but she can't crack the nut. And then at the end, the nut cracks her.
There's that puppet death.
And she dies, and then I kill her. Yes, so happened, and then and that was really great. And then we actually had a long form improv troupe with puppets. So I actually started doing puppet workshops that was combining, my puppetry training and knowledge from sandglass with improv and games and exercises. So it was really great. And some of the best stuff was when you saw an improviser who, I remember this very clearly. There was a guy who was a bigger guy, and I remember watching him perform on stage, and any scene he was in, he would always self-critique. His character would be really like self-hating and and just like make fun of himself like before anybody else did, or it was always about his body or something like that. And he came to this improv workshop we did with puppets, and he put on this bat puppet, and he did this hilarious Dracula voice, and it was this big character, and it was nothing about him, right? It was all about the puppet. It was just this huge release, right?
Yeah.
It was really great.
It's one of the best things about puppetry is you can truly be anything.
Yeah. And
No
it's very restorative in that way. But yeah, so that was very exciting. That was a great time, but it was very busy. Lots of running around and doing shows. I think I was in the house troupe, so I was performing like 3 times a week at the end there. And our Commerce Street group was 3 puppeteers and 2 human improvisers. So that was what was really different about our group, was that it was long form, but we would really play with, the puppeteers would wear all black, but the human improvisers would wear really colorful clothes. And so we really wanted the puppets and the human improvisers to be kind of on the same level visually. And it was great because it was like the freedom of like walking around without having to worry about monitor setups or anything, but just having all these hilarious interactions. And through that, I found a lot of rules and rule breaking that was really fun. And it was always hilarious to see a human do something and then the puppet do it, right? Or versa. Like what are those interactions? What are those juxtapositions? It was fun. It was a great time. And then I started to feel like I wasn't making any inroads into kids television. I was looking around and I was always asking like, oh, is there anyone in children's media? Like I think I made 1 short film, and I don't know. It was just like, I loved working in production, but it was also not the type of production I wanted to be working on. And I was like, I gotta figure out a way how to make my own stuff, how to make my own show. And so that's when I had the idea that I should go to the French puppet school. Have you guys heard of ESNAM?
I've not, no.
Oh my God. So ESNAM is the French school in Charleville-Mézières. It is a 3-year puppetry program. They only take people once every 3 years. It's a cohort. They only take people once every 3 years, so that's when their auditions happen. And they only take people under the age of 26.
So if you don't get in at a certain time, you're done. Yeah,
it's very French, and that's where I was. I was like 23 or 24 at the time, and I had read about it in all my Puppetry Internationals, and I realized that's the school.
You have one chance now.
I literally have one chance. So I spent a year like doing improv and all
learning
this stuff,
French.
but I was learning French. I was like teaching. I was doing the whole like the free French program online. I was like doing all these exercises at night and
muzzy tapes out and
started eating French toast and eating French fries and doing everything French.
I was wearing a beret to work. It was ridiculous.
To bed, right? Yeah,
I grew up pencil thin mustache. It was amazing. And I was like in my head, I was like, yes, this is it. This is the way. And because it was also, if you got in, it was free, right? Because it was paid by France. And I think the only other American that I know that has gone to this school is Basil Twist. So it's a really intense program. I know a lot of puppeteers have gone over, and you can do like smaller, like 3-month stays, like 3-month workshops and stuff. And but it's a really amazing program. And I put together my audition, or I put together my whole portfolio, and I like sent it to France. And I remember I was at work and I got an email all in French. I was like, what's happening? And sorry. I like Google Translate. I wasn't that good at actually reading French. And they invited me to audition. in France. So it was like,
Did they pay for the flight too, though?
no,
Oh.
of course not.
Yeah.
So it was 2011, and I was like, I'm going to France. I have never taken a vacation. Well, I did take a vacation. My previous vacation had been taking a week off to go in 2011 to the it was 2011, the Green Mountains Puppet Festival, hosted by St. Glass, and that is an international festival, and it was so amazing. That was when I saw Heather Henson perform for the first time. I slept in a shack for a week, just to see all the. I ended up volunteering for all the shows, even though I paid my way in, and I was just, I was just eating it up. I was like, yes, this has been the best way to get back here. But then I think right after that I was already getting ready for my audition, and at that show, at that festival, I met Colette Garrigan, who did this amazing show called Sleeping Beauty, and it was a solo production, and it was so amazing. It was the first time. That was another puppet moment of just it blew my mind. All her front shadow work and front lighting shadows and transformations, and even though she was in her early 40s, she had this little bob cut, and she would turn on the light, and the shadow that she cast it looked like a little 10-year-old girl, right? It was just really beautiful stuff. And she went to ESNM, and I keep saying that, and it's the École Supérieure École Supérieure de la, it's des Arts de la Marionnette or something like that. But yeah, in Charlottesville. And she went to the school, and she was the one person that I was like, you've actually been to this school. Can you give me some advice? Right. And she was like, just be yourself. And that was really nice. But I did reach out to other puppeteers, and I was like, have you ever been to this school? What do I do? I've never done an audition. I went to film school, right? This is very intimidating to me. And I was like, I need to make a new show for my audition. So I made this new show called How Unfortunate, about a fortune teller, and it broke the fourth wall. And I was like, this is great. They're going to eat it up. And, but this gets into my Puppeteer's story.
No.
So I think I'll tell it, but I didn't get in. I'll just say that.
Okay.
And I didn't get in, and I flew back, and I was like, I got to keep working at reality television. And I mean, it was a fun job, but it was also this is not my baby.
Yeah, it wasn't true to what you were hoping to be able to accomplish. Yeah,
and I think it was really funny because there was a day on set, I think it was a year later maybe. And there was a day on set where Mike, our sound guy, who is my fairy godfather, but I think I was talking about something puppety, or I had brought something to set to show people. And I think Mike just looked at me, and he was like, you got to get out of here. And I was like, what? He was like, you can't do this forever. You have to get out of here and find something else. And I was like, oh. And that sat with me for a couple of weeks, and then we had some blow up on set, and I walked out of the room, and I looked at my phone, and I called Bart because I still had his phone number from Sandglass, because we had done Sandglass at UConn. Right.
And this is Bart Rockaburton, who's the head of
I called Bart P. Rockaburton Jr., who is the head of the puppet arts program at the University of Connecticut. And I had met him while doing Sandglass, the Sandglass Institute run by Eric and Inez Zeller-Bass. And he had seen my work that 3 weeks. That's when it was 3 weeks long. And he had told me at the end of that 3 weeks, he was like, if you ever want to, this has been your audition. So if you ever want to come to here for grad school, you can. Yeah. And I was like, great. I probably won't. I don't know why it didn't register with me. And so, yeah, I remember I just called him on the phone, and I was on set, and he picked up. He was like, hello. I was like, Mr. Rockaburn, this is me. I don't know if you remember me, but I was at sand class and I would love to audition, or I don't know if auditions are closed for the program. This was in the summer, and he was like, well, we just did auditions a few weeks ago, but we're still accepting video auditions. So I'll give you
But
the
you told me
email.
I didn't need to audition, right?
I know. Well, that's what I was like. I was like, you know what? I knew he wouldn't remember any of that, and I wasn't gonna pick seams there. But he was so sweet, and I was like, yes, I am gonna earn this. So I sent in an audition tape, and then I didn't hear back for a bit. But then I heard back, I think about 2 months before I had to leave, that I got in. So that's when I left. And that was a big thing, is leaving Dallas for Connecticut for the program for grad school. And then I went to grad school. I went to puppet school, and that was great. I was like, the best decision I ever made. It was basically like going from Dallas, which is like big hair, everyone dresses up all the time. And then I got to the University of Connecticut, and like the first person I meet is Penny Benson, and she's just got like plaster all over her clothes and stuff. And I was like, yes, this is great.
Still has the big hair though.
Oh yeah, she's got. Oh, but it's it is untamed, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was really great. Is meeting all the glops, right?
Right.
The glorious ladies of puppetry, as Leslie Carrera Rudolph says, and I dove right in. I think it was I had a really. There were some hard days working for production for the company in Dallas, and I think working with all of those personalities, right? All of these homeowners and crew members, and I realized after doing that, I was like, I can work with anybody. So I was able to come out and just, I really dove in, and I worked at the Ballard Institute. I worked in the storage unit, or the storage cottages, for like 10 hours a week, and organizing puppets. And I said yes to everything. I went to every forum, because this was the knowledge that I had been like trying to find, in Texas. And when I will say, when I was in Texas, it wasn't until I went back to Dallas and got that job that I started hearing about Trouble Puppet and Glass Half Full Theater in Austin doing all these shows. And I was like, what? No, now I hear that they're, so I would, you just go, you have to find it. So I made a lot of trips to find it, right? I would go back and forth to Austin just to see their shows, and going to, Connecticut to go to the 2011 Green Mountains Festival, just constantly trying to find it. And yeah, the University of Connecticut was a really good experience. That was really great.
Well, and to jump ahead a little bit, to talk about your master's project, really was a culmination of all those things you were hoping to work towards in creating children's entertainment and really having a great message. Can you talk about the Treeples and developing that?
Yeah, so, really, I went to the University of Connecticut to do the master's project. I really went because I was like, I realized that the third year is your master's project. And I was like, that is the year that I will make a television pilot for kids. I was just like, I will do 2 years of coursework so I can make this pilot. And that was kind of my attitude going in. But along the way, it was just, I realized how much, how many other worlds there were within puppetry, and how many other styles and places to perform it. And Treeples was my master's project for the puppetry program at the University of Connecticut, and it is a television show pilot. It is a show about following the adventures of everyday girls who have problems at school, and they run away to the woods where they help out 3 forest creatures fight a monster. And the monster is kind of a metaphor for whatever problem that they're having at school. And it was a 21-minute TV pilot that we shot in and around the woods of Connecticut. And so it's all outdoors with puppets, with a live human girl, and it was really fun. I'm really proud of it. It took about a year and a half to develop, a year to build the puppets, right? And thankfully, through UConn, I actually spent one summer interning with Puppet Heap in Hoboken. So that was another summer where I was driving into Hoboken and then coming back to Connecticut on the weekends to work at the Ballard Institute. And it was a lot of back and forth, but that was great because I learned how to make really good television puppets. And we filmed, I wrote the pilot, developed it, and did fundraisers. Actually, I had been applying for the Mr. Rogers Memorial Scholarship 2 times before this, once in undergrad, and I had done it the second year, or the first year that I started working on Treeples, I had applied for it. But it is, I don't know if it's around anymore or if they offer as much funding, but basically it was a scholarship that I received and won for Treeples that was $10,000 in support of children's television project for being done at schools. The problem with the other thing that we had to do was find basically crew and camera equipment because the University of Connecticut, they do have a media program, but they're very kind of off the beaten path. And I think they kind of really want to keep their equipment safe and not let a lot of people that aren't in the program use it. So what I did was
filthy puppeteers.
Well, I ended up we got a grant for a grant from Digital Bollocks, which is a company that does not exist anymore, sadly. The cameras do, and they're amazing. But we got a grant from Digital Bollocks, which was the Women in Cinematographers grant. And I brought in my friend Leticia Gallegos, who shot the whole thing. And she was fantastic. The footage looks, the shots are amazing, and everything. It was just really beautiful to shoot outside, and it's all tactile, and I just love the merging of the fantasy. I think for kids and really for me, I love the nature of seeing a human and a puppet interact in the same world. I think that is a fantasy that can't really be offered by anything else unless you do kind of like Roger Rabbit style animation. But that really it's just a beautiful thing on the screen to see a kid interacting with something that actually exists, right?
Totally. And to see it in the natural light too of the outdoors is really something that you can never capture in the studio.
And the other thing about filming outdoors is because it's not in the studio, you just have depth, right? And I think a lot of puppet shows you see in a studio setting are very flat, right? Because there's the backdrop and, maybe it's filmed a little bit more like theater. And I just love that we had all this depth to work with, the depth of the woods, and it was all broken up by all this light. And we just spent a week in the woods filming it in the summer of 2015. And then it took about a year. Well, it took about 6 months to a year to finish all the post on it. And then after that, I took it to film fests around the United States. Went to the BAM Festival. I played there. Puppets on Film. Went to the Atlanta Film Festival. It actually premiered at Slam Dance in Utah, and we went over there for that. And it was a really wonderful experience, and everyone did a great job. The crew was in lead up to it. I was doing workshops with the crew and the cast. I actually had the students at the puppet program. I did like a kind of like an on-set type of workshop, and I was doing improv workshops that last semester for my puppeteers, so they would be more willing to go with the flow, so we wouldn't ruin a take, and stuff like that, just to prepare for filming in the woods and be ready for anything. And I wanted it to feel, the other thing I really wanted with that was to have all on location sound. And so I actually did hire a sound guy to come in. That was the one like outside crew member that came in and really did some good sound recording on location. So that was nice. But yeah, it was quite a project. It was really hard. And we, I had, we did all the posts in Dallas actually, because of my old editor that I knew from my production days was there. And so, and my friend Kevin helped and did all of the post-production sound, and we recorded music. And my good friend Sarah, also from Dallas, from film school, she had done all the music for my films, and she's a composer, and so she came in and composed music for Treeples. So it all like came full circle, right? And that was really great. But yeah, so now I have this beautiful television 21-minute movie basically that is this pilot, and the goal is that it would be a show that has a rotating protagonist. So each episode would be actually a different girl going to the woods and fighting off monsters.
Oh, cool.
Like you do. Yeah. But it is also one of those projects that the 3 Treeples are 3 female characters, and the pronouns are she. But I did use John Cody and Austin Costello as 2 of the puppeteers for that. But honestly, it gave it this kind of androgynous nature to them, which I really like. And I think we need a little bit more of that. And I think that's something puppets can do really powerfully, is because I've had kids relate both genders to Zodi.
Mm-hmm.
who is kind of the champion, and Maya is the engineer, and Kira is the leader. But yeah, so that was really neat to discover that. And
so
yeah, I
you
had
used
like
their actual voices for the final piece.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Very cool.
I just wanted them, and that's the thing. I really love the energy in the moment when you are puppeteering. I think it was really strong, and I don't know, coming from improv theater, it was really necessary for me in case anything came off the cuff, right? Mm-hmm. That we had it,
Right.
Because sometimes you can't and I just didn't have I don't think I really wanted to spend a lot of time in a sound booth.
Part of making art, sometimes you just got to trust your gut, like this feels right, and that's the direction that you wanted to go in. That's great.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just thinking too, the what you said about making sure that your puppeteers were improv trained. Not only, I'm sure that was helpful for filming in the location that you were, but also for working with a kid and working with puppets. I mean, there are just so many variables of that. It must have just been really good to have that sort of security blanket in of, we're gonna do our best here, and sometimes go off script, sometimes not get what's planned, but you salvage it either in the edit or in the storytelling. And
oh yeah, because you sometimes in the edit room, that's when you start scripting some stuff too.
Right.
There was a part of the scene that was scripted, but then we got into the edit room and we edited it that way, and it was really awkward. And I was like, oh, well, thank goodness we have this shot and this shot. And then we reordered some stuff and extended sound here. And, the magic of editing, right? You get a second chance at the scene, basically. And that was really great. And that was also necessary, as the director is sitting with the editor for those final couple of days to make it all make sense, right? I think that's the most important thing, is shot to shot, it has to make sense. Just like with object puppetry, it's movement to movement, it has to line up, it has to make sense, And that's I think another parallel between film and puppetry is like there's nothing is extraneous, right? It is all necessary. There are no unnecessary shots, no unnecessary colors, no unnecessary, right? It's just everything. It has to be there for a reason, I think. But yeah. But yes, so Treeples was really wonderful, and I love it, and I have this pitch Bible for it, and so that is still on the stovetop of life.
That's so cool. One thing I'm thinking about is I'm looking at this Treeples show, and then you mentioned earlier that Little Red Riding Hoodie thing that you did, and like looking at the difference between that, something this far produced and something so, that's essentially object puppetry, right?
Simple.
Yeah, so simple. And I think obviously there's room for both, and I think a lot of people, I think it's so inspiring that that Little Red Riding Hoodie idea. Like, what makes you be able to look at that and decide that that's a good idea? Because I feel like so many other people would say, like, oh, I want to do a Little Red Riding Hood, and they're going to try to make these photorealistic puppets and stuff, and try to make, and that's to them, that's what makes it good, or that's what makes it professional. How do you have this filter in your head that says, you know what? That's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be anything else. Like that kind of thinking outside of the box. Is there any advice you could give to our audience to think more outside the box like that?
I think it's always a question of.
I feel like if I thought of that, I'd be like, this won't work. People are going to be like, why don't you just get a wolf puppet? And the other thing too is like, you're very capable as a puppet builder too. It's like, why did you say the fur coat is enough? Versus using the fur coat to make the wolf puppet.
It starts even before that, right? It starts with this idea. Sometimes it just starts with a title and a joke, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it just started with, I actually had the idea of Little Red Riding Hoodie a couple of years ago, or before I even made Fairy Tailor. It was like, oh, that's hilarious. What if we did Little Red Riding Hoodie? And so hoodie gives me the clue, okay, if this, then what? Like that is a huge term that I use. That's what I learned in improv. It's like, instead of just like jumping all over the place, start with if this, then what?
Yeah. If
Little Red Riding Hood is a hoodie, then what is grandma? Oh, a nightgown. Yeah. If they are both coats, right? If they are both coats, then what is the wolf? Oh, he's got to be a fur coat, right? It's just like, it just comes together, and it's like that train of thought is is kind of my go-to. Yeah. And I love solving those problems like within a framework, because you build your framework and then you break it, right? Yeah. But you've got to build it before the audience can be like, wow, that's amazing. Wow. She just broke her own rule. Right. So it's funny because I think that's yeah. And I think a lot of my work is all over the place, right? Like my Lisa the Wise show is a full shadow puppet show. Fairy Tailor is 3 mostly object puppetry stories within a tailor shop. Actually, shadow, hand puppetry, object puppetry. And that's very different than Lisa, and Lisa is very different from Treeples, and Treeples is very different from my new. I just opened Judy Punches Back, which is my feminist Punch and Judy show. That's a total hand puppet show, but that's what I'm realizing in all of this is it's a lot of funny feminism. Is kind of the through line, which is interesting. It's that and really like making a good framework for the story. And sometimes it starts with a story, sometimes it starts with a joke, but whatever the starting point is, that's immediately one wall of my frame, and that helps me limit it a little more before I break it open again.
I love that. Yeah, and it's something when you set some creative challenges for yourselves and you get that framework, then sometimes in the writing process, it almost feels like cheating, because when you say if red is going to be a hoodie, than what is grandma, it almost feels like, I don't want to say obvious, but it's like, oh, of course it has to be the nightgown. And then it's like, oh my gosh, okay. And it makes it easier on yourself when you have those, you almost create these questions that you have to solve. And then it's just I don't want to say math problem, but it's kind of like solving that creative equation, which is so much fun.
Right. And I learned that also at Sandglass is this idea of concepting, is like the idea of like, what do puppets do best is they transform, right? Or they play with scale, or, like those are also things that I like to think about and have in the back of my mind. They don't do language incredibly well, and so that's always really interesting, is like, what do they do best? So once you have the puppet, then you start playing. When I had Little Red Riding Hoodie, I literally just like kind of crumpled up the hood, and I was doing all these, I was just playing with her, right? And figuring out, and I knew she would have a basket. And so we had the basket, and then I realized this basket is huge, and I had her trying to like pull it around, and I was like, how is she going to have this basket? And then I had her jump in the basket, and the basket becomes a car. And it's just like, it's so funny, right? And so it's like things become other things because you've already set up this world or this rule that like a hoodie can become a character, right? And so now the basket becomes the car, and the things, but the things in this world, right? That's the other thing, is like, even with the Busby Berkeley piece, the Lullaby at Broadway piece, it was like, okay, I want to do this big stage number. Lullaby at Broadway is kind of about a woman who parties too much and then she dies. Like, that's kind of the concept. And so it's a cautionary tale, basically. And so I thought, well, if the tassel is the woman, I actually didn't know what I was going to do for the man. And then I went shopping, and I was like, well, what is the worry is that, or what's a party atmosphere, right? It's like dishes, it's glasses, it's cigarettes, it's like, and so I was like, oh, shot glasses and cigarettes, right? And it's like, oh, okay, that's my limit, right? That's my framework. And dishes can make the stage. And then I found this little wine opener that literally looked like a guy with a top hat. And I was like, that's the guy. And sometimes it just like, these magical things happen once you start looking, once you narrow once you filter the world, right? Mm-hmm. You find out what this world is going to be.
Some simple rules. Right.
Yeah. That really, really helps. And then once I had that limit on it, then it was like awesome to do. Yeah. I can do so much with just these few things, because sometimes
if you had someone that said, hey, create a puppet show in 10 minutes. You can use anything. It's like, it's overload. But it's like, okay, make a puppet show in 10 minutes. You can only use silverware. It's like, oh, I can come up with something quick in 10 minutes then. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it's also like, well, and then it's like, well, what does silverware want to do? Yeah. Like, silverware has connotations. And so you use those in the story you're going to tell as well, right? Yeah. What I loved about Little Red Riding Hoodie is that I also wanted to do a puppet show of Little Red Riding Hood where you actually see the wolf eat her, right? I've seen hand puppet shows, and it's a beautiful way to do it. It's like you have the wolf and you have Little Red, and she's like, oh no, and then they go behind the playboard, and then he's eaten her. But
with slurp that sleeve down like a piece of spaghetti.
Yeah. With the coat down, what I do is I have my hand in there, and I grab Little Red, I pull her off my hand, and I yank her into the coat. Uh-huh. And so it does look like, and he's like thrashing back and forth, and I can make it more violent depending on the age of the viewers. But it's fun. Like, it's fun to watch, like, right? After one show, I remember this kid came up, and she had her little doll, and she was like, can he eat my doll? And so I had the wolf like eat and it's literally like my hand just pulling a doll into a coat.
Right.
And it's just like, gosh, you kids are so easy. No, it's fine.
That does take some death.
Yeah, but what's beautiful about it also is like sometimes you break the rule again and you turn it back into a coat at the end of the show because the coat is laying down and the jogger, instead of a hunter, the jogger comes in because it's a windbreaker. Right? The jogger comes in and unzips the wolf's stomach. Because it's a zipper. And it's like, it doesn't cut it open, it unzips. And it's so funny because it's like, some kids are like, what? And then the parents are all like, it is a coat with a zipper.
Right.
So, and then like Little Red pops out.
That's
right?
like, you know what would be what else would be cool if it was like a one woman show on stage, but you came in, you wore it all as layers, and then each layer you take off becomes the character, and like at the end you're just wearing like a black leotard, and that's how you're doing it. That'd be kind of interesting.
That's very Marx Brother.
Yes,
I do like that. Unfortunately, I don't think I could fit into the Little Red Riding Hoodie because it's literally.
Is it? Okay. It's a lot of layers
little.
too.
It is a very little. It's like 0 to 3 months. Okay. But yeah, little Freddie could wear it.
Yeah, absolutely, she could.
Yes. So that's kind of my thinking is just I'm always in service to the story or whatever game I want to play, and I think that's the improv performance stuff is like, what is the game, right? And stay close to the game and heighten, right? And so that's really that's kind of my mantra. That's what I like to do. But I also, I don't know, I do gravitate towards stories of
puppet death.
Puppet death, but like female empowerment and lots of like just funny women, because I don't think there's enough of that either on stage or on TV, especially for girls. I mean, in when I was doing Treeples, I did all of this. So many studies about, there just aren't enough possible roles for girls to play that they see, right? And that just drove me crazy, especially as a kid. It's like, I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, do I like film because of April O'Neil? Because she like stood on the sidelines and just like watched what the Ninja Turtles did, And so you really, the social learning theories of like kids will role play what they see. And if they don't see enough possibilities, then they're limited to Cinderella, April O'Neil, and princess. So that's really what I try to usurp. Is that idea. And I got a lot of feedback in the build, and people were saying, oh, they need hair, they don't look like girls, and they need to be more feminine, and why isn't there a pink one? Why isn't there a princessy looking one? And I was like, because they have every other character on television. Because it's like so it is like, but in my way, like Maya has a little tutu, so I was like, that is her feminine like piece, but she also has this little boy's vest. But people, they need to see the fairy wings and all this stuff. And
there could be a lot more.
I don't know. I wish I had a little bit more of a variety of role models as a kid, and I think what's happening right now with more diversity in film and media, especially with kids, it is great. It's like, oh, good. And, in the Treeples research, there was Gina Davis Institute did some great studies, but like way back in 2004 on like what is girls' role in the media? Like, what are they being shown? And like, boys were more likely in their studies. They found that boy characters were more likely to achieve a goal, take action, and girls were more likely to, talk. And you just saw the differences, and it was fascinating. And it just like was like, well, a part of me was like, does one of the Treeples need to be a boy? And I was like, no, boys need to relate to girl characters too, and they do. I actually had several boys say they really relate to Zodi. I've had boys come up to me after Fairy Tailer and be like, I love him, and they're talking about Red Riding Hoodie, and it's like, wow. I say she the whole time. I have this kind of like voice, but it's still relatable. And I'm like, yes.
That's great.
The androgyny of it is really powerful. It can be a great tool. And so, yeah, I really love it.
Great.
Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
No. That's,
Yeah,
that's a wonderful.
You teased us with your Puppeteer story. I'm dying to hear it now.
A great place to wrap up.
Okay, so my Puppeteer story, I really thought about all those builds that went awry where you're up till like 4 a.m. and you're screaming at your partner because you have barge rage or whatever.
Barge rage.
Do you have a camera here? Are you watching my life? Oh my God.
They're just like, there's too much barge on that press that you're handing me, blah. And I was thinking about it. And I was like, well, I think the most, and a part of me is like, oh, this is so it's kind of a silly problem to have, is I didn't get into French puppet school. But I will say the audition to French puppet school, to the Charleville-Mézières school, was heartbreaking. It was probably the hardest I've cried over anything puppety. And so what happened for this audition is that I got that email to fly to Charleville-Mézières to audition for the school that was capped off at 26. So the next time around, I knew I would have aged out from auditioning for the school. And I flew over. I didn't know what I was like. I had studied. I had made this new piece called How Unfortunate for the audition. And I went over there and got there, and I was so jet lagged. But I made it. I made it for my audition. I chose my. You had to go into a room and choose some objects to like make a improvisational show and stuff. And then I went down I was called for the audition, and I walked into the stage, and there were just all of these puppet professors or judges that were not like, I was expecting them to kind of be like at eye level. They were all the way up there in the back of the theater on the height, and they all had these reading lamps, so they were all underlit. It was just like glowing heads, like glowing floating heads, and they were all just looking at me. And I had my puppet and my little table and everything, and so I got through the monologues, and I did some other stuff. I got through the monologues, and then I started my show, which started out as the story is this little woman who's a fortune teller. She doesn't have anybody coming in, and so she ends up reading her own palm. And in reading her own palm, something horrible is about to happen. And the audience doesn't know what, but she starts freaking out, and she starts packing up, and then she runs. She can't run off the table because it's a table. And she starts really freaking out. And then she backs up into me, the puppeteer. And then the puppeteer, that's my entrance where I come down. And I actually have a conversation with her. And we're actually sharing a live hand. It's a tabletop, like Bass Rod style tabletop puppet. And we share this hand. And we start having this conversation about what did she read on her palm and all this stuff. And we get in a tug of war with the hand, and then at the end it culminates in I finally have control over the hand, and I grab her, and I'm like, what did you what? It's this very big moment, and the end is what did your palm say? Like, what did you read in your fortune? And she says murder, and she falls down, and I'm like, murder? That's ridiculous. I'll go check if anybody's here. And then I just kind of like drop her. She hits the table, and I leave, and I'm like, hello. And then I see that she's dead, and I'm like, It's kind of like full
Did you
circle.
do that at a national slam? I feel like I've seen that.
It was my national slam.
Okay.
It was my first national slam piece, but it was also my audition piece.
Right.
And so I start with Fifi, and we're doing the palm thing. She's reading the palm, and she freaks out, and she's going all over the stage, and then she backs up into me. And right before I come in to do do the kind of like breaking of the fourth wall or whatever, I hear this, please stop. And I stopped my show, and I'm holding this puppet, and I look up, and then the judges start asking me questions about the show, like who is she? And I kind of thought that this was a moment of like, oh, they want to know something, and then I'm going to get back to the show. Like, I'm going to finish the show. So I started just giving them little snippet answers so we could kind of like get back to the show. She was like, who is she? And I was like, oh, this is Fifi. She's a fortune teller. And I started to go again, and then they asked another question and another question. And they were like, okay, moving on. And they were like, move on to the improv section. And I was just like, what? I couldn't believe it that I like had flown from the US all the way over to do this. I mean, literally like a 6-7 minute puppet show, and got cut off. And I kind of was like, oh, I was really thrown. And so I put the puppet down, and I did my improv portion, which was really fun. And then it was totally improvised because I'd been working in improv, and they asked me, I remember one of the judges asked me afterwards, he was like, when did you write this? And I was like, just now. And they were like, no, like, when did you write this show? And there was this confusion of like, no, I did it on the fly, but they were I don't know. It was improv. It was improv.
So good that they thought that
which I had been training, which that was my training, was improv. Yeah. And I think they were very confused as to like, it was very smooth. Like, I had chosen objects that like made sense, and I did this whole story about like and we won't get into that, but yeah, but then I came out, and then I remember reading the list that night. They like make a big ceremony. They post a list of the people going on to the next round of auditions, and I wasn't on the list.
No.
And I just
high school all over again.
Yeah.
Auditioning
I
for shows.
I boo-hooed the rest of the night, and you know, it was one of those things also where it's like, this is my chance, right? Like, I've been working in reality television. This is the one chance to do what I'm supposed, quote unquote, like supposed to do, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that moment in the audition it was shocking. Yeah. And I was so upset, and I was so confused as to why they cut me off.
Yeah. So like, did they think you were done, or? Like,
looking back, is there any reason you can think of as to why they would stop it? Like, there wasn't a hiccup.
I honestly think that she had this shaggy hair, mm-hmm. and I think that she had this hair that was actually covering her eyes, puppet? And I think they wanted her to like really have like more of like a face than just this shaggy thing, but it. You know, really, when we do the tug of war, the hair was really great because her hair was flying up everywhere. So that was kind of my intention, but we never got there. So yeah, it was like, but you know what? After that, I asked the librarian that night or the next day in Charlottesville, I just went to them and I was like, just give me every tape that I should watch. They were like, okay. And I was like, give me your weird stuff. And she gave me tapes of like Ronnie Burkett and like Ilka Schoenbein and Neville Tranter. And like, I just went up and I watched all these puppet show recordings that they had for like 2 days. And then.
So do you think that experience has like made you better? I
think so. I am really glad.
Because that's one thing I noticed too. I can't think of the example off the top of my head, but like sometimes a heartache like that makes you like, that means the next audition you go into, there's nothing they can do that can shake you after flying to. That was kind of
exactly. It's like, oh, I can do anything after this.
You walk
my bar is now
someone's bawling over there, like, honey, that ain't nothing.
Yeah, it's like my heartbreak bar was like, ding. So I was like, I can handle this now.
The thing with a broken heart, you can't break it again. Yeah. Always. Right?
Yeah, so it was really good. I'm actually really glad that I did not go to that school, because I think it would have been very isolating, and I think it would have been really, really hard. And I don't think I would have been able to do anything film, probably, because it is definitely more of a performance and building school. So I'm really, really thankful that my path went another direction.
So your path though. So what's the best way for people to follow like all the things you're going to be doing in the future? And
yes, you can always follow me on Instagram at Puppet Motion, which is the name of my company.
Do you have a website
And
too?
yes, so if you go to puppetmotion.com, you can do that. SarahNolen.com also works. Sarah with an H, Nolen with an E. And Facebook, I'm on as just Sarah Nolen Puppeteer. So I have a page there. That's where I post all my like touring stuff, and that's a lot through Puppet Showplace. Also follow Puppet Showplace Theater. I mean, we do so much. And if anyone is ever in Boston, please come visit us in Brookline Village. And
go to a Jim Jam, go to a show, see a
I'll go to Jim Jam. Yeah,
we want to go so bad. We're gonna do it.
You have to come. You can stay with
our
me.
goal is to do it this summer. But
please do.
I had a baby.
He'll be in the fall.
Oh, God.
Squanch those rumors now.
We also have our open studios November 2nd and 3rd here at the Waltham Mills where I'm at. And so there's just a lot of ways. So find me, and then and congratulations, Datum, on your baby.
Thank
it's
you.
so exciting.
Yeah,
I've seen pictures. Very precious.
Yeah, we post a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
That's great.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you all so much. I had a blast.
Sarah Nolen, thank you for joining us on Puppeteers. It was so good to catch up.
Yeah, thanks so much.
It's great to see you all.